I wanted to find out if my MPC60's days were numbered because of the way I can adjust the sample rate and get that lo-fi sound on the Roland P-6. It's one of the few reasons why I still have my MPC60. It just sounds so good. So today we're gonna find out if this tiny battery-powered thing can get me close to the texture and the grit I get from the 60. And if it can, maybe it's time to let it go. We'll see. So today I'm gonna test three things: drums, synth chords, sampled up, pitched up, and then pitched back down, and lastly, samples from tracks that have more organic sounds to them. I'm not really testing a workflow thing here, since I'll be taking these samples and chopping them up on other devices that are not these. What I'm after is texture and sound quality and just kind of vibe that I can get from these machines. All right, let's get to the tests. Okay, so let's start with the drums. Here's just a simple drum beat that I made on the MPC60. Same drum beat here on the P6. Now I'm going to switch it up on the MPC60 to a pattern that the samples are slightly clipped. That's where I find a lot of the magic happens on the MPC60, especially with kick drums. And to kind of do something similar on the P6 on pattern 2, this is going to be at 11 kilohertz sample rate. And then pattern 1, which I'll actually do the comparison with first, is going to be at the 14.7 setting that's on here. So let's listen to the MPC60 clipped. You hear the hi-hats? They get super crunchy. And the kick is just huge off of the 60. Now what's nuts is how big of a difference the P6 is between itself. Basically, again, pattern 1, this is going to be at 14.7, and then pattern 2, which I'll just jump to, is going to be at 11. Listen to this. Super crunchy. The high end just gets completely shaved off. Again. Now let's go to the 60. All right, so now let's just take a listen to the drum sounds on their own. We got the kick. Pretty similar, right? Again, this MPC60 is always stuck at a sample rate of 40 kilohertz, where the P6, these sounds were sampled in at 14.7. If we wanted the full clean version of this, it'll sound like this. This is the 44.1 sample rate on the Roland P6, basically no lo-fi. Sounds pretty clean. Now listening to the clipped sounds on the MPC60, this really destroys the high end of samples. You won't hear it too much on the kicks. Maybe a little fuller. But listen to this. This is where it really goes crazy. So here's the clean hat. Here's the clipped hat. And same with the little tambourine sound. Here's clean, dirty. Really just destroys the high end. And like on crashes or rides, forget about it. It's just like, it's honestly kind of ear piercing to a certain extent. Now listening to the super crunchy sounds sampled in at 11 kilohertz on the P6, they sound like this. Right off the bat, a big plus for the P6 is that it has the ability to resample and downsample right on the device. The MPC60, on the other hand, is always stuck at 40 kilohertz. And resampling on the MPC60 is just not possible. On the P6 though, you could resample, and you also get to choose between different sample rates called lo-fi. You get 44.1, 22, 14.7, and 11 kilohertz. The lower you go, the worse it sounds, or to some, the better it sounds. Both machines are 16-bit, even though the MPC60 stores its samples at 12-bit, but has 16-bit DACs. Where this really comes into play, I'm not sure. I read it on the internet. Is it true? I'm not sure, but all I want to know is how does it sound? Okay, let's get to the synth chords and the piano stuff, because this is where a lot of big changes happen and the fun really begins. We'll start with the MPC60. We have the normal version of the sample, and then we have the sample itself sampled in an octave higher and then pitched down by 1 octave on the MPC60. Huge difference. Now let's listen to the same on the P6. Normal, sampled an octave up and pitched down. There's a little bit of clipping on this sample. You're gonna have to forgive me for that. Anyway, let's move on to the next sound. Normal, down an octave. Normal, down an octave. Now for the big one, the synth. Normal, down an octave. Listen to that. Now listen to the 60. Do you hear that big, almost like trumpet sound that just shows up? It's like it added mids or low. It's so trippy the way the 60 really starts to just like bring out these extra tones and textures. Again on the P6. Another thing to note here is that the MPC60 technically can sample stereo, but I've only sampled in mono. It's such a pain in the butt to sample in stereo because you need to do one side at a time and then combine the sample later, and that's only if you have the Velixi update, which I do, but these samples here are just mono, and they still sound pretty huge. And these samples here were sampled in at the 14.7, and the reason I'm not sampling in at the 44.1 to show kind of an apples to apples is because that's not necessarily how I would be using the P6, right? What I'm chasing here is like character of how the machine would interpret a sample. If I wanted a clean sample at 44.1, I would just use the sample itself, because the 60 is going to put it at 40 kilohertz, which is that weird kind of off thing. And then it's also going to be 12-bit sample, but then through 16-bit DACs or something strange. I'm not exactly sure about all that, right? Or like where it matters and stuff. But on here, having something like this at 14 is cool because I can't achieve that on the MPC60. And do I like that character? A little bit, right? It's pretty warm. And then if I pitch it down, that's kind of cool too. But a big plus that the P6 has is I can take a sample like this, go into keyboard mode, and pitch it around. Where if I wanted to take that same sample, this one here, I can only pitch it down by 1 octave, which is more than enough, but I don't really get that cool kind of aliasing texture, because where I really want that to come from is the one that I sampled an octave higher, and then I pitched this around, right? But I only have 1 octave to play with, where on here, I can just keep going. I can go down 4 octaves, or I can go up 4 octaves. So there's way more room to play with on the P6 than there is on the MPC60, and not even to mention the sample size or sample time limitations I have on the MPC60. I actually ran out of sample space doing this test, where on the P6, it just took it like a champ. Now the last test, I wanted to put in an example of sampling an entire track that I wanted to chop up, right? And again, I'm using these machines just to get the character out of this. I would get the character and then send it off to another machine and chop up the sample there and play it from that machine. That's a bit more transparent versus these machines, because chopping on the MPC60 is such a pain in the ass. I hate doing it. It's doable, but my God, is it slow. And chopping on the P6 is, yeah, I don't want to do it. I don't want to deal with these tiny pads. So here is the sample regular. Now, here it is pitched up 1 octave and then pitched down after it's been sampled up an octave. Sounds pretty good. It almost like you can hear that psh, psh at the very end, the 2 snares. kind of get crunchy and distorted, but for the most part, it almost sounds like it has more highs. Normal, pitched. Now, same thing here. Normal. Whoa. Highs are gone. Again, 14.7. Whoa, now this might be a result of me just sampling in mono versus stereo, but listen to the shaker. It's actually kind of gone on the MPC60. It's still kind of there, but it's like way in the background. It's kind of gone. But you hear it so much here on the P6, but then almost not at all here. Okay, and the last final test just for fun. I kind of combined the sounds and the sample to make like a simple house track, just to kind of see how it sounds, all molded together coming out of their stereo out. So here's the MPC60. And the P6. Of course, there's a ton of differences here, right? We're using super downsampled drums on the P6. Really crunchy, kind of no high end. These are a little clipped, but nice and bright. Really full sounding, really big. I mean, I don't know. So to wrap it up, I think they excel at completely different things. The MPC60 ain't going anywhere anytime soon because of the way that it handles drums and the way it just blasts out beats, right? And plus, I think it's the best sounding MPC, better than the 3000. I honestly do. I had one and this thing sounded better. Now, when it comes to the Roland P6, this thing is super dope when it comes to just taking a sample and processing it through the effects and its multi-effects and just crunching it down and getting it super dirty. I do wish that the sample rate reduction didn't lose so much of the high end, but that's a battle I'm willing to take, and it kind of has to happen. And not to mention, for 220 bucks, you get this crazy tiny effects processor and resampler that you could take with you, right? Anywhere, and process sounds kind of on the go. I mean, it's got a built-in microphone, which is one of my favorite things. So if you have this with other samplers, I think it's a great creative tool to get ideas going and just get textures and sounds out. I mean, again, not to mention the granular stuff. Anyway, my friend, I hope you found some entertainment or inspiration from this video. I hope to see you again next week. And I'm honestly really glad that this does not sound nearly as good as the MPC60. Until next week, my friend, you already know the drill. Share the love, share the knowledge. Knowledge is power. Peace. Play me out. No headphones on, but I think it's gonna sound good. It's the track from earlier, right? It's gotta sound good. Hopefully I'm in tempo.